I bought my parents' love in monthly installments for 10 years, thinking $600 was a fair price for peace. I believed my money was keeping the lights on in the house where I grew up. Until the day I found out I wasn't paying for electricity at all. I was underwriting my sister's mistakes while they mortgaged my future behind my back. That was the day the payments stopped, and the war began. The rain in Marowak always felt different than the rain in the suburbs. Here. Amidst the steel and glass of the downtown corridor where I lived and worked, the rain was functional. It washed the grime off the sidewalks and kept the rhythm of the city moving. It was efficient. Just like me. My apartment was on the 14th floor, a one-bedroom box of beige walls and sensible furniture that I kept immaculately clean. It was a sanctuary of silence, a place where no one asked me for anything, where the air was not thick with unsaid resentments or passive-aggressive sighs. I was 33 years old, and I had built a life that looked perfect on paper. I had a title that sounded important, Senior Logistics Coordinator, and a salary that allowed me to save for a retirement that was still 3 decades away. But the cornerstone of my routine, the anchor that kept me tethered to the family I both loved and feared, was the transfer. It happened on the first of every month. $600. It was not a loan. It was not a gift. It was a tariff I paid for the privilege of being the good daughter. I had set it up 10 years ago, right after I landed my first real job out of college. My father had lost his position at the manufacturing plant, and my mother had looked so small, so fragile. Sitting at their kitchen table with a stack of unpaid utility bills, I had stepped in. I had offered, and then, when my father found work again 6 months later, nobody mentioned stopping the payments, so I didn't either. Over the years, it became part of the background noise of my finances, a monthly subscription to my parents' approval. I was sitting at my desk, staring at a spreadsheet filled with shipping manifests, when my phone buzzed against the hard laminate surface. I glanced down and felt that familiar tighten in my chest, the Pavlovian response to the word "Mom" flashing on the screen. I took a breath, composed my voice into a register of calm competence, and swiped to answer. "Hey, Mom," I said, "is everything okay?" There was a pause, a rush of static, and then the sound of a heavy, dramatic exhale. "It is just one of those weeks." "Ellie," she said, her voice tight with a stress that felt both practiced and genuine. "The water heater is making that noise again, and your father is worried about the property tax assessment. It never ends. You know how it is. I did not know how it was. My rent was paid on time. My savings account was padded, and if something broke, I called the super. But I knew my role. I am sorry." "Mom," I said, "that sounds stressful." "It is," she said. "It really is. And, Ellie, I hate to even bring this up, but I was checking the accounts this morning, and the transfer has not cleared yet." I frowned, pulling the phone away from my ear for a second to check the date. It was the 2nd of the month. "That is strange," I said, bringing the phone back. "It is set to automatic. Mom, it goes out on the 1st. Every single month. It has not changed in years." "Well, it is not there," she said, her tone shifting from weary to accusatory. "And we have the electric bill auto-drafting tomorrow. I would hate for it to bounce. Ellie, it is embarrassing enough as it is without having to worry about insufficient funds." The guilt pricked me, sharp and immediate, just as she intended. Even though I knew, logically, that a 24-hour delay was likely a banking glitch and not a moral failing, I felt like a disappointment. "I will check it right now," I promised. "I will manually push it through if I have to. Please do," she said. "We are counting on you. You are the dependable one, after all." She hung up without saying goodbye, leaving me holding the phone in the silent, fluorescent hum of my office. The dependable one. It was a compliment that felt like a cage. I logged into my banking app immediately, the interface loaded, spinning for a moment before displaying my balances. I scrolled down to the transaction history. There it was. Pending since yesterday. Transfer to external account ending in 4022. It was processing. It was not late. The bank was just slow. I took a screenshot and texted it to her with a simple caption. "It is processing on the bank side. Should be there by tomorrow morning." I did not get a reply. The unease started then, a low hum in my gut. It was not about the money itself, it was the urgency. My parents owned their home in Pine Hollow. My father had a pension and a part-time consulting gig. My mother sold handmade jewelry on the weekends at craft fairs. They were not wealthy, but they should not have been living on the razor's edge where a single day's delay and a $600 transfer threatened to turn the lights off. I pushed the thought away. I had a family dinner to attend that evening, and I needed to be armor-plated by the time I drove out to the suburbs. The drive to Pine Hollow took 45 minutes, as the gray skyline of Merriwick faded in my rearview mirror, replaced by the manicured lawns and wide driveways of the tedious suburbs. I felt myself shrinking. I was a grown woman, a professional, a homeowner in spirit if not in deed, but the closer I got to my childhood home, the more I felt like the awkward, quiet teenager who could never quite shine bright enough to blind my parents to my flaws. I pulled into the driveway behind my father's sedan. The house looked beautiful. It was a 2-story colonial with white siding and black shutters, the kind of house that projected stability and American warmth. The flower beds were freshly mulched. A new wreath hung on the door. I took a deep breath, checked my reflection in the visor mirror to ensure my expression was neutral, and got out of the car. The smell hit me the moment I walked inside. Potpourri, floor wax, and roasting chicken. It was the scent of my childhood, a sensory trigger that made my stomach knot. "Ellie," my mother called from the kitchen. "We are in here." I walked through the hallway, noting the framed photos on the wall. There were dozens of them. My sister, Mia, winning the state cheerleading championship, Mia at prom, Mia graduating from beauty school. There was one photo of me, a graduation portrait from college where I looked pale and tired, tucked into the corner of the arrangement like an afterthought. In the kitchen, my mother was stirring a pot on the stove while my father sat at the island, nursing a glass of scotch. "Hi," I said, placing my purse on the counter. "You made it," my father said, not looking up from his drink. "Traffic bad?" "Standard," I said. My mother turned, wiping her hands on a dish towel. She looked tired, the lines around her mouth etched deep, but she offered me a tight smile. "Did you fix the transfer?" she asked. "I told you, Mom," I said, keeping my voice light. "It was just processing. It should be in your account by now." "Good," she said, turning back to the stove. "We really cannot afford mistakes right now." I wanted to ask why. I wanted to ask how a household with 2 adults and multiple income streams was so fragile that my contribution was the load-bearing wall. But I didn't. I bit my tongue, grabbed a glass of water, and leaned against the counter. "Where is Mia?" I asked. "She is running a little late," my father said, his voice softening instantly at the mention of her name. "She had some audition thing in the city, or maybe it was a networking event. She's trying to get that styling business off the ground." "Right," I said. 20 minutes later, the front door burst open. The energy in the house shifted instantly. The air, which had been stagnant and heavy, suddenly seemed to vibrate. Sorry I'm late." Mia swept into the kitchen like a weather system. She was 2 years younger than me, but she looked 5 years younger. She was glowing, her hair perfectly highlighted, wearing a coat that I knew cost more than my first car. She dropped a designer bag on the floor and hugged our mother, then kissed our father on the cheek. "The traffic was a nightmare," she said, breathless and charming. "But I have the funniest story. You will die." She launched into a tale about a mix-up at a coffee shop involving a minor celebrity and a spilled latte. She acted it out, doing voices, using her hands. My parents watched her, transfixed. My father's stoic face broke into a genuine grin. My mother laughed, the tension leaving her shoulders. I stood by the sink, watching them. I was the audience, not a participant. I was the one who paid the admission fee so the show could go on. Finally, Mia turned to me, her eyes bright. "Ellie, I didn't see you there. You are so quiet today." "Just tired. I said, "Long week at work." Mia rolled her eyes playfully, looking at our parents. "Ellie is always tired," she said. "That is what happens when you work for a logistics company. It sounds so heavy. I do not know how you do it. I need creativity. I need flow. If I had to sit in an office all day worrying about spreadsheets, I think I would wither away. It pays the bills," I said, my voice flat. Mia grabbed a piece of carrot from the salad bowl and crunched it loudly. "See?" she said, pointing a manicured finger at me. "That is what I mean. You are so practical, so uptight. It pays the bills. You need to live a little. Elle, money is energy. You have to let it flow to get it back. You hold on to it too tight. It makes you sour." My father chuckled. "She has a point. Ellie, you could stand to loosen up." I felt the heat rise in my cheeks. I wanted to scream. I wanted to pull out my banking app and show them exactly how my uptight money was flowing directly into their accounts. But I just took a sip of water. Dinner was a blur of Mia talking and my parents nodding, but as I sat there, picking at my roast chicken, I started to notice things, small things, contradictions that didn't fit the narrative of poverty my mother had spun on the phone. My father had complained about the property taxes, claiming they were drowning, but as I looked around the kitchen, I realized the countertops were new. They weren't the laminate ones that had been there since the 90s. They were quartz, thick, veined, expensive quartz. And the appliances were stainless steel, clearly recent upgrades. Then there was the conversation about Mia's weekend. "I am thinking of going to the coast with the girls next weekend," Mia said, pouring herself more wine. "We found this adorable Airbnb. It is pricey, but we deserve it, right?" My mother smiled indulgently. "You work hard, honey. You should go." I frowned. Wait, if Mia was struggling to get her business off the ground, how could she afford a luxury weekend? And if my parents were worried about the electric bill, how could they afford a kitchen renovation? Something was wrong. The math in my head was flashing red. "I need to use the restroom," I said. Standing up abruptly, I walked down the hall to the guest bathroom and locked the door. My hands were shaking slightly as I pulled out my phone. I needed to see it. I needed to see the history. I opened the banking app again. I navigated to the recurring transfers page. I wanted to see exactly when the payments had started and if I had missed something. I scrolled back. Last month, $600. The month before, $600. I kept scrolling, going back year by year. And then I stopped. 3 years ago. The transfer amount listed was $500. I blinked. I didn't remember increasing it. I scrolled back further. 5 years ago. It was $350. My breath caught in my throat. I had set up the transfer at $350 when I was 23. I remembered that number clearly because it was exactly 10% of my take-home pay at the time. When had it changed? I clicked on the transaction details for the first increase. It was dated 4 years ago. The description just said, "Recurring transfer modified." I backed out of the app and opened my email. Searching for my father's name, I typed in transfer and money into the search bar. Hundreds of emails popped up. Most were mundane, but I found one from 4 years ago. Subject: a favor. Body: Ellie. Things are a little tight with the medical bills this month. Do you think you could bump the help up to $500 just for a few months? We will let you know when to drop it back down. Love, Dad. I read the next one, from 2 years ago. Subject: house repairs. Body: the roof is leaking. Honey, we are in a bind. Can we do $600 for a bit? It is temporary. We promise. Temporary. They had never asked me to lower it. They had never mentioned it again. And I, in my busy, guilt-ridden fog, had just let it ride. I had let the temporary become permanent because I was too afraid to ask about money, too afraid to be the bad guy. But there was something else. I looked at the modification dates in my banking app again. The changes had been made online. I hadn't logged in to change them. I froze. When I was in college, my father had helped me set up my first checking account. He knew my security questions. He knew my mother's maiden name. He knew the name of my first pet. Had he logged into my account and changed the recurring amount himself? The thought made me nauseous. It felt like a violation. It wasn't just about the money. It was the access, the entitlement. I washed my face with cold water, trying to steady my breathing. I couldn't go back out there and pretend everything was fine. I had to say something, but I had to be smart. I had to be the logistical, rational daughter they claimed I was. I unlocked the bathroom door and walked back to the kitchen. They were laughing at something Mia had said. They didn't even notice I'd been gone. I sat down. "Hey," I said, keeping my voice level. "I was just thinking about what you said." "Dad, about the property taxes." He looked at me, his smile fading slightly. "What about them?" "If things are that tight," I said, "I think we should sit down and look at a budget. I can help you guys organize the expenses. Maybe we can find some places to cut back." The room went silent. The air pressure dropped. My mother put her fork down slowly. "A budget?" she said, the word tasting sour in her mouth. "Yes," I said. "I noticed the kitchen upgrades. Those must have been expensive. If we are worried about electricity bills, maybe we shouldn't be doing renovations. I just want to help you manage the cash flow better so you do not have to stress every month." My mother's face flushed a deep, blotchy red. "Manage us?" she said, her voice rising. "You want to manage us? Like we are one of your little shipping projects? I am just offering—" I started. "After everything we did for you," my father interrupted, his voice low and dangerous. "We put clothes on your back. We paid for your college tuition. We supported you when you were finding yourself. And now you are auditing us? You are counting pennies in our own house? It is not counting pennies." "Dad," I said, my voice trembling slightly, "it is my money. I just realized the transfer amount has gone up twice over the years, and I do not remember agreeing to make those increases permanent." "Oh, here we go," Mia said, throwing her napkin on the table. "Way to ruin the mood. Ellie, you always do this. You make everything about money. I am not ruining the mood," I said, looking at her. "I am trying to have an adult conversation. You are being disrespectful." My mother snapped. "We are your parents. Ellie, we are not your employees. If you do not want to help us, just say so. Do not sit there and judge how we live." "I am not judging." I said, "I am just—" "You are," my father said. "You are looking down your nose at us. You think because you have your fancy job in the city that you are better than us." I looked around the table. 3 pairs of eyes were staring at me with varying degrees of hostility. I was the enemy. I had brought reality into their fantasy, and they hated me for it. "I am going to go," I said, pushing my chair back. I did not wait for them to answer. I grabbed my purse and walked toward the front door. My heart was pounding against my ribs like a trapped bird. I was halfway to the door when I heard footsteps behind me. "Ellie, wait." It was Mia. I stopped and turned around. She was standing in the hallway, her arms crossed over her expensive coat. She wasn't smiling anymore. Her face was hard, calculating. "What?" I asked. She walked closer, invading my personal space. She smelled of expensive perfume and wine. "You need to calm down," she said. "I am calm. Mia. I am just tired of being treated like an ATM." She stepped closer, dropping her voice to a whisper. It was sweet, cloying, poisonous. "Look," she said, "I know you think you are being righteous, but you need to understand something. If you stop helping them, it will destroy Mom. Her blood pressure is already through the roof. If they lose this house, or if they have to declare bankruptcy, that is on you." She poked me in the chest with her finger. "You are the one with the money. Ellie, you are the one who can fix it. If you walk away, you are killing them. Literally." I stared at her, stunned. It was a masterclass in manipulation. She had taken my boundary and turned it into a weapon. "I am not killing anyone. Mia," I whispered, "I just want to know where the money is going." She smiled then, a cold, thin expression that didn't reach her eyes. "Just pay the bill. Ellie, it is cheaper than a funeral." She turned and walked back into the kitchen. I heard the laughter start up again before I even opened the front door. I drove home in a daze. The rain had picked up, lashing against the windshield, blurring the lights of the highway into streaks of red and gold. I felt hollowed out. I had gone there looking for clarity, and I had left with a threat hanging over my head. It will destroy Mom. You are auditing us? Uptight. Selfish. The words swirled in my mind, mixing with memories of my childhood. I remembered being 10 years old, apologizing because my shoes were too expensive. I remembered being 16, working a summer job to pay for my own school trip because my parents said they couldn't afford it, only to see Mia get a new wardrobe the next week. It had always been this way. I was the supply. Mia was the demand. I reached my apartment building and parked in the underground garage. My phone buzzed in my pocket as I walked to the elevator. I pulled it out, expecting a text from my mother. Another guilt trip. But it was a notification from my bank. A security alert. New linked account request. A request to link an external checking account to your profile has been initiated. If this was not you, please contact support immediately. I stopped dead in the concrete hallway. A new link. Not a transfer. A link. That meant someone wanted full access to pull funds, to see balances, to move money at will. I hit the dial button for the bank's fraud line instantly, my fingers fumbling. Please hold for the next available representative. I paced in the lobby of my building, the elevator doors opening and closing behind me. Finally, a voice came on the line. This is David with Fraud Prevention. How can I help you? Hi, I said, my voice breathless. I just got an alert about a linked account request. I did not authorize that. Okay, let me pull up your profile. Can you verify your mother's maiden name? I gave him the information. I heard him typing. Okay, Ms. Griffin. I see the request here. It was initiated about 20 minutes ago. It looks like the request came from a device that has logged into your account before. An iPad? My stomach dropped. My father had an iPad. He used it for everything. 20 minutes ago. That was right after I left the house. Right after I threatened to look at the budget. It was not me. I said, my voice shaking, please cancel the request. And I need to change my password. We can certainly do that. David said, I will decline the link and reset your credentials. I would also recommend setting up two-factor authentication if you haven't already. Do it, I said. Do all of it. Lock it down. I hung up the phone and rode the elevator up to the 14th floor. I walked into my silent, dark apartment and didn't turn on the lights. I stood by the window, looking out at the city rain. They hadn't just gotten angry, they had panicked. When I threatened to look at the numbers, they didn't just defend themselves. They tried to secure a back door. They tried to link an account so they wouldn't have to ask me for transfers anymore, so they could just take it. It wasn't just favoritism. It wasn't just that they loved Mia more. They were stealing from me, and they felt entitled to do it. I thought about Mia's threat in the kitchen. If you stop helping them, it will destroy Mom. I pressed my forehead against the cold glass of the window. I had spent my entire life trying to be good enough to be loved. I had paid my dues. I had been the dependable daughter. But dependability was just a nice word for exploitable. I opened my banking app one last time with my new password. I went to the recurring transfer, the one that had quietly grown from $350 to $600, the one that paid for granite countertops and weekend trips while I ate leftovers in my office. I clicked Cancel Recurring Payment. A confirmation box popped up. Are you sure? I looked at the screen. I thought about my father's guilt. I thought about my mother's anger. I thought about Mia's smile. Yes, I whispered to the empty room. I tapped confirm. The line item disappeared. The chain snapped. I was not sending another dollar, not until I knew exactly what they had done to me. And for the first time in my life, I didn't care if they loved me for it. I just wanted the truth. I put the phone down on the counter. The silence in the apartment didn't feel lonely anymore. It felt safe. It felt like the first breath of air after being underwater for 33 years. The war had started, and I had just fired the first shot. The morning after I canceled the transfer, The silence from my phone felt heavy, like the drop in pressure before a tornado touches down. I sat at my kitchen island with a cup of black coffee. Staring at the screen, I had expected an immediate explosion, a phone call at midnight, a barrage of texts demanding to know why the notification had come through. But there was nothing. That silence was worse than the yelling. It was tactical. They were waiting for me to break, to panic, to undo the damage I had caused by simply saying no. I took a deep breath and typed out a text to both of my parents. I drafted it 3 times, deleting words that sounded too apologetic, then deleting words that sounded too aggressive. I needed to land somewhere in the middle, firm, but still the dutiful daughter they expected. Mom, Dad. I have paused the automatic transfer for this month. I wrote, I am not abandoning you, and I want to help if you truly need it. But I need to see a clear breakdown of the household expenses and debts first. Once we can go over the budget together and I understand where the money is going, we can talk about resuming the help. Let me know when you have the papers ready. I hit send. I put the phone down and watched the steam rise from my coffee. My heart was hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. It was a reasonable request. Any stranger looking at that text would see a responsible adult asking for transparency. But in the Griffin family ecosystem, asking for transparency was an act of war. It was an accusation. The response came 10 minutes later. It wasn't from my father, the peacemaker pretender. It was from my mother. Her text popped up, a gray bubble that seemed to chill the room. We do not need to justify ourselves to our own daughter. After 30 years of raising you, I did not think we would have to submit an application to be treated with respect. I stared at the words. There was no warmth, no familiar guilt trip wheedling. It was cold, clipped. It sounded like a lawyer speaking, or a stranger who despised me, before I could type a reply. A second text arrived. Your father thinks your therapy is making you paranoid. You are seeing enemies where there is only family. It is sad. Ellie. I felt a flush of heat crawl up my neck. I had only mentioned I was seeing a therapist once, in passing, 2 years ago. I hadn't told them why. That I spent 60 minutes a week trying to untangle the knot of anxiety that lived in my stomach whenever I thought about them. They had filed that information away, kept it in their arsenal, and now they were deploying it to discredit my reality. I didn't reply. I couldn't. If I engaged with the insult, I would lose the ground I was trying to stand on. I went to work. I sat in my cubicle, surrounded by the hum of logistics and the banal chatter of coworkers planning lunch. And I felt like a ghost. I moved shipping containers across oceans on my dual monitors, rerouting cargo to avoid storms, efficient and precise. But my mind was back in Pine Hollow, in that kitchen with the quartz countertops, wondering what they were saying about me. My father called at lunch. I stared at the phone vibrating on my desk. I let it go to voicemail. Then I called him back 5 minutes later. Once I had walked out to the parking garage for privacy, I needed the concrete echo of the garage to remind me I was in the city. Safe. Away from them. Dad? I said. Ellie? His voice was controlled. Low. It was his disappointed patriarch voice. I got Mom's texts. I said, cutting straight to the point. Your mother is upset, he said. But that is not why I am calling. I am calling because Mia is devastated. I blinked, staring at a concrete pillar. Mia? She called us crying this morning, he continued. She feels like you are punishing her. She said you looked at her with such hatred last night, and now you cut off the support? She thinks you are trying to hurt us to get back at her for being successful. I let out a short, incredulous laugh. Successful? Dad, I am asking to see a budget. That has nothing to do with Mia, and if she is so successful, why does my $600 matter so much? Do not pivot. Ellie, he snapped, this is not about the money. This is about your attitude. You have become cruel. We are a family. We help each other. We do not hold leverage over each other's heads like loan sharks. The irony of the statement almost knocked the wind out of me. I am not a loan shark, I said, my voice shaking. I am the bank, and the bank is closed until I see the books. There was a long silence on the other end. When he spoke again, his voice was ice. You are walking down a lonely road. Ellie, you are pushing away the only people who will ever truly love you. Fix this, before you cannot come back from it. The line went dead. He hadn't mentioned the electric bill. He hadn't mentioned the property taxes. He hadn't mentioned the tight month. He had talked about obedience. He had talked about hierarchy. He had framed my request for financial clarity as a moral failing, a cruelty inflicted on his golden child. I went back to my desk, but I couldn't focus. I felt dirty, like I had been covered in a thin film of grease. Over the next week, the strategy shifted. If the direct assault didn't work, they would use the infantry. It started with my Aunt Carol, my mother's sister. She lived 2 towns over and usually only texted me on my birthday, thinking of you. Honey, her message read on Tuesday evening, talk to your mom. I know stress makes us do things we do not mean. Don't punish your parents for getting old. We only have them for so long. Then came my cousin, David, on Thursday. Hey, Elle, heard things are tense. Just a heads up. Family is everything. Money comes and goes. Don't be the reason they struggle. The phrasing was uncanny. Punish, struggle. Don't be the reason. It was a coordinated narrative. My parents weren't just mad. They were campaigning. They were getting ahead of the story, painting me as the unstable, vindictive daughter who was cutting off her elderly parents for no reason. They were isolating me, making sure that if I tried to tell anyone my side, that I was being exploited, the well would already be poisoned. I needed sanity. I needed a witness who wasn't on their payroll. I called Maya. Maya had been my friend since our freshman year of college. She was a lawyer, sharp-tongued and fiercely loyal, the kind of person who saw through bullshit before it even entered the room. We met at a coffee shop on Saturday morning, a neutral ground of roasted beans and indie folk music. I looked terrible, and I knew it. I hadn't slept properly in 4 days. You look like you are haunting this table, Maya said as she sat down, placing her latte on the wood. Spill it. I told her everything. I told her about the automatic transfers that increased without my permission. I told her about the kitchen renovation, Mia's expensive coat, the login attempt on my bank account, and the coordinated guilt campaign. When I finished, Maya didn't look shocked. She looked sad. Ellie, she said softly, you know this isn't new, right? The details are new, but the dynamic? You have been buying a subscription to their love since you were 22. I looked down at my hands. It hurts to hear it out loud. I whispered, I know, she said, but you have to look at the transaction. What are you actually paying for? You pay them $600 a month. In exchange, they allow you to be the scapegoat. They allow you to be the safety net so Mia can play pretend. That is the deal. And now that you stopped paying, you breached the contract. I felt tears prick the corners of my eyes. I just wanted them to be my parents. Maya, I wanted them to protect me. They can't, she said, or they won't. Either way, the result is the same. You have to stop looking for logic in their reaction. They aren't reacting to a budget request. They are reacting to a loss of power. She reached across the table and covered my hand with hers. You need to lock everything down. Ellie, not just the bank account. Check everything. If they had your login info, what else do they have? I have my credit frozen. I said, I did that years ago after the Equifax breach. Check it again, she said, and get those documents. Do not let them gaslight you into thinking you agreed to those increases. Make them show you the proof. I took her advice. That afternoon, I sent a text to my father. I kept it brief, devoid of emotion. Dad, I am still waiting for the breakdown of expenses. Also, please forward me the written agreement where I authorized the increase to $600. You mentioned I agreed to it. I would like to see that document for my records. He didn't reply for 6 hours. When he did, it wasn't a text. It was an email. Subject: Agreement. Attached. IMG_4092.jpg. There was no body text, just the attachment. I opened it on my laptop. It was a blurry, poorly lit photo of a piece of paper lying on a table. It looked like it had been taken in a hurry. I zoomed in. It was titled, Family Loan Assistance Agreement. It was typed on plain word processor paper, dated 4 years ago. The text was simple, almost childishly so. I, Ellie Griffin, agree to assist my parents with household costs in the amount of $600 monthly until further notice, to cover medical and home maintenance expenses. And at the bottom, there was a signature, Ellie Griffin. I stared at the screen, the pixels swimming before my eyes. The signature was loopy, distinct. It had the sharp E and the crossed Fs that I used. It looked like my signature, but it wasn't. I knew it instantly, in my gut. The tail of the N at the end of Griffin curved up. I always curved mine down. It was a small detail, a muscle memory thing. Whoever had signed this had practiced my signature, probably tracing it from an old birthday card or a check I had written them years ago. But they had missed the rhythm of the N stroke. It was a forgery. I felt a wave of nausea roll over me, hot and sour. My father, the man who taught me how to ride a bike, the man who had walked me down the aisle at my imaginary weddings when I was a little girl, had sent me a forged document to justify stealing from me. Or maybe he didn't forge it. Maybe my mother did. Maybe Mia did. It didn't matter who held the pen. He had sent it. He was presenting it as truth. I sat there for a long time, the laptop screen glowing in the darkening room. This was a crime. This was fraud. If I took this to the police, if I showed them the banking logs and this photo, my parents could face real trouble. The thought terrified me more than the theft. The conditioning ran deep. Protect the family. Don't air dirty laundry. Don't be the reason they suffer. I couldn't call the police. Not yet. I wasn't ready to be the daughter who put her parents in handcuffs. But I couldn't unsee the forgery. The trust was gone, incinerated by that blurry JPEG. I needed to know how deep the rot went. Maya's voice echoed in my head. What else do they have? Monday morning, I took a half day off work. I didn't go to my usual big box bank where my checking account was held. I went to a local credit union on the north side of Marowak, a place where I had a small savings account I used for travel. I wanted a fresh set of eyes. The branch was quiet, smelling of carpet cleaner and stale coffee. I sat across from a loan officer named Sarah, a woman with kind eyes and a messy bun. How can I help you today? Ms. Griffin? She asked. I want to talk about identity safety. I said, I have some concerns that my personal information might have been compromised by a family member. Sarah's expression shifted from professional to sympathetic instantly. She lowered her voice. I am sorry to hear that. It is more common than you would think. What makes you suspect it? There have been some unauthorized access attempts on my bank account. I said, and I recently found a document with a signature that looked like mine but wasn't. I just want to make sure my credit is clean. Okay, she said. Let's pull your file. You said your credit is frozen? Yes. She typed on her keyboard, her eyes scanning the screen. Okay. I see the freeze on TransUnion and Equifax. Experian is locked too. That is good. It stops anyone from opening new lines of credit. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. Okay, good. However, Sarah said, leaning in closer to the monitor, I'm seeing some activity here that is a little unusual. My heart stopped. What kind of activity? Soft inquiries, she said. You know how when you check your own credit, or when a company you already have a loan with checks you, it doesn't hurt your score? Those are soft pulls. Yes, I said. You have a lot of them from the past year, Sarah said. From a data furnishing company called Briarstone Data Services. I frowned. I have never heard of them. They usually handle background checks or account reviews for private lenders, she explained. It looks like they have been checking your file every month, consistently, usually. That happens when you have an active account with a lender and they are monitoring your continued eligibility or debt-to-income ratio. But I don't have any private loans. I said, I have my student loans, which are federal, and my car lease. That is it. Sarah turned the monitor slightly so I couldn't see the full details. A habit of privacy. If you didn't authorize these, It might mean there is an account open that is reporting to a different bureau, or perhaps an account that was opened before you froze your credit. Sometimes private loans or older debts don't show up on the standard summary page we see here. You need to pull the full, raw report, the detailed one. Can you do that? I asked. You should do it yourself, she said gently. Go to the official annual credit report site. Download the full PDF for all 3 bureaus. Go through every single line item. If you see Briarstone or anything else you don't recognize, you need to dispute it immediately. I nodded, my throat tight. Thank you. Sarah. She handed me a card. If you find something, come back. We can help you file the fraud affidavits. But Ellie, if it is family, you have to be prepared for what you might find. I walked out of the credit union into the bright, blinding sunlight. The world looked the same, but the ground felt unstable beneath my feet. I drove home. I didn't turn on the radio. I sat at my desk in my apartment. I opened my laptop. I went to the website Sarah had told me about. I entered my social security number, my date of birth, my address. I answered the security questions. What was the color of your 2018 Honda? Which of these streets have you lived on? I clicked Submit. The report generated. It was 80 pages long. A dense wall of text and numbers. I started scrolling. I verified my student loans. Correct. I verified my credit cards. Correct. I verified my car lease. Correct. I kept scrolling. Past the closed accounts. Past the inquiries. And then I saw it. Page 42. Under the section labeled Installment Loans, Private/Other, Creditor, BSH, Lending Group, Status, Open/Current. Original balance, $45,000. Monthly payment, $602. Date opened, 4 years. 3 months ago. Associated address, 14 Maple Drive, Lake Briar. I stopped breathing. Lake Briar. Lake Briar was a small town about 30 minutes north of Pine Hollow. I had never lived in Lake Briar. I had never set foot on Maple Drive. But I knew the timing. 4 years, 3 months ago, that was exactly when my father had sent the email asking to increase my monthly transfer to $500, and then, a few months later, to $600. I looked at the monthly payment on the report again. $602. My transfer had been $600. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. It wasn't just greed. It wasn't just them needing extra cash for groceries or a kitchen renovation. They hadn't been using my money to help with their bills. They were using my money to pay a monthly bill for a loan in my name. I was paying off a debt I didn't know existed. I was sending the money to their account, and they were forwarding it to this BSH lending group, keeping the account current so I would never get a late notice. Never get a call from a collection agency. Never know. That was why the payment had to be exact. That was why it couldn't be late. That was why my mother had panicked when the transfer was delayed by 24 hours. It wasn't about the electricity being cut off. It was about the loan going into default and alerting me. I looked at the address again. 14 Maple Drive, Lake Briar. Why Lake Briar? What was in Lake Briar? My hands were shaking so hard, I could barely control the trackpad. I highlighted the address and pasted it into a map search. It wasn't a house. It was a P.O. box inside a generic strip mall shipping center, a mailbox rental. They had opened a loan in my name, used a fake address to hide the mail, forged my signature on the agreement, and then tricked me into paying for it myself by disguising it as family support. I stood up, pushing my chair back so hard it knocked into the wall. This wasn't just bad parenting. This was an operation. It was calculated. It was sustained. It had required planning, execution, and years of silence. Every time my father hugged me, every time my mother told me she was proud of me. This secret was sitting between us, eating my financial future alive. $45,000. Where did the money go? I paced the living room, my hands gripping my hair. Did they spend it? Did they buy the new kitchen with it? Did they give it to Mia? Mia had started her business 4 years ago, the styling business that never seemed to have any clients but somehow kept her in designer clothes. I ran back to the computer. I looked at the date the loan was opened again. October. I opened my social media, scrolling back through my own timeline to find Mia's profile. I scrolled back 4 years. October. 4 years ago. There was a photo of Mia, holding a glass of champagne, standing in a leased studio space with exposed brick walls. Caption: "Big things coming. So grateful to my investors for believing in my vision. Boss, babe, new beginnings." My stomach turned over. I was the investor. I was the silent partner. I was the bank, the guarantor, and the victim. I looked at the credit report one last time. Status: open/current, as long as I paid. The secret stayed buried, but I had stopped paying. The next payment due date on the loan was listed as the 15th of the month. That was 3 days away. If that payment wasn't made, the lender would call, and since they had a fake address, they might call the number on file. Which number was on file? I scanned the entry. There was a phone number listed under contact info. It wasn't mine. It wasn't my parents'. I pulled out my cell phone and dialed the number. My fingers trembling. It rang once, twice. "You have reached the voicemail of Tamsin," a woman's voice, unfamiliar. I hung up immediately. I didn't know who Tamsin was. I didn't know how they had done it. But I knew one thing with absolute, terrifying clarity. My parents hadn't just taken my side. They had taken my identity. They had cannibalized my life to feed their favorite child. I sank down onto the floor, the cold hardwood pressing against my legs. I wasn't crying. I was past crying. I felt a cold, hard resolve crystallizing in my chest, sharp as a diamond. They wanted a war? They wanted to talk about family loan agreements? Fine. I wasn't the dependable daughter anymore. I was the plaintiff. The sign on the door was modest, etched into frosted glass. Merriwick Legal Aid Collaborative. It was not a high-rise firm with marble floors and intimidation tactics. It was a second-story office above a bakery, smelling faintly of yeast and old paper. A place where people went when the fine print of life had started to strangle them. I sat in the waiting room, clutching a manila folder so tight my knuckles had turned white. Inside were the printouts of my bank statements, the blurry screenshot of the Family Loan Assistance Agreement, and the terrifying 80-page credit report that listed me as a debtor to a company I had never met. For a house I had never lived in, Mr. Vance, the attorney, was a man in his 60s with a cardigan and the weary, patient eyes of someone who had seen every possible variation of human betrayal. He ushered me into his office and listened without interrupting for 20 minutes. He looked at the signature on the blurry photo. He looked at the credit report entries from Briarstone Data Services. He looked at the bank transfer history. Finally, he took off his reading glasses and folded his hands on the desk. "Ellie," he said, his voice quiet and grounding, "you need to understand what you are looking at. This is not a misunderstanding. This is not a family squabble about an allowance." "I know," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "It feels like fraud." "It is identity misuse," he corrected gently, "and potentially forgery. But legally speaking, right now, to the creditors, you are simply a borrower who has stopped paying. That is the reality we have to address." He tapped the credit report. "You have 2 paths," he continued. "Path 1 is acceptance. You acknowledge the debt, you pay it, and you protect your family from consequences. Path 2 is dispute. You file an affidavit of identity theft. You alert the bureaus that this account was opened without your consent. You freeze the mechanism. If I do that?" I asked, the question hanging heavy in the air. "What happens to them?" Mr. Vance looked at me with profound sympathy. "The truth has its own timeline, Ellie. If you file a dispute, the lender has to prove you signed that paper. If they cannot produce a valid, notarized original with your wet signature, the debt falls back on whoever actually received the benefit, or it becomes a criminal matter regarding who signed your name. But you are not ruining anyone by telling the truth. You are simply returning the burden to where it belongs." I walked out of his office an hour later with a to-do list that felt like a battle plan. I had to document everything. I had to dispute the account. But before I pulled the trigger on the legal filings, I needed to be absolutely certain of the narrative. I went home and turned my apartment into a war room. I cleared off my dining table and opened my laptop. I created a spreadsheet. Column A, date of transfer, increase or emergency request. Column B, the reason my parents gave. Column C, Mia's life events. I spent 3 nights digging through 10 years of digital detritus. I searched old emails, Facebook posts, Instagram captions, and text logs. The pattern that emerged was so clear it was insulting. 7 years ago. Request. My father texts me that the transmission on his sedan blew out. Cost, $2,000. Mia's timeline. 3 days later. Mia posts a photo of herself in Cancun with her friends. Caption. Last-minute getaway. Needed this recharge. 5 years ago. Request. My mother calls crying about a root canal she cannot afford. She needs $1,500. Mia's timeline. The same week. Mia moves into a new apartment in the trendy district. The security deposit would have been roughly $1,500. 4 years. 3 months ago. Request. The big one. The email asking to increase my monthly transfer to $500 for medical bills. Mia's timeline. Mia launches her styling business. She rents the studio space. She buys the inventory. I sat back, staring at the glowing grid. There were no medical bills. There were no car repairs. There was no leaky roof. I was the venture capitalist for my sister's vanity. My parents had been laundering my money, stripping it of my hard work and repackaging it as their own generosity to keep Mia afloat. They wanted her to be successful so badly that they were willing to bleed me dry to simulate it. The rage I felt wasn't hot. It was cold. It was a glacier moving through my chest, crushing everything in its path. But the daughter in me, the one who still wanted to believe there was a misunderstanding, needed to try one last time. I needed to offer them an off-ramp before I blew up the bridge. I called my mother on a Wednesday evening. I kept my voice low, calm, devoid of accusation. "Mom," I said when she answered, "please do not hang up. I want to help." There was a pause. The silence was thick with resentment. "You have a funny way of showing it." "Ellie," she snapped, "do you know your father has not slept in 3 nights? He is pacing the floor." "I am sorry he is stressed." I said, "But Mom, I have been looking at the numbers. I know things are complicated. I know about the loan in Lake Briar." The line went dead silent. I could hear her breathing catch. "I know it is in my name, Mom," I continued gently. "And I know you guys have been struggling to keep it paid. I am not calling to yell. I am calling to offer a solution. If you send me the paperwork, the real paperwork, we can go to the bank together. We can restructure it. We can get it out of my name and into yours. Or maybe we can work out a payment plan that is honest. But we have to stop the lying." I waited. I expected tears. I expected a confession. I expected her to say, "Thank God. Ellie, we were so scared." Instead, she laughed. It was a brittle, hysterical sound. "Restructure?" she said, her voice rising in pitch. "You think you can just walk in and fix everything? You think you are so smart, with your spreadsheets and your city job? You have no idea what it takes to keep this family standing. I am trying to help you." I said, "You are trying to control us," she screamed. "You are rewriting history." "Ellie, you always do this. You twist things to make yourself the victim. You agreed to help us. You said whatever we needed. You would do. And now because it is inconvenient, because you want to buy fancy furniture or whatever you do with your money, you are accusing your own father of crimes? Mom, I did not sign that paper. You wanted us to fail," she shouted, sobbing now. "You have always been jealous of Mia. You have always wanted to see her crash just so you could feel superior. This isn't about money. This is about you being hateful." She hung up. I sat there, the phone warm against my ear, listening to the disconnect tone. She hadn't denied the loan. She hadn't denied the fake address. She had just attacked my character. In her mind, my refusal to be defrauded was an act of jealousy. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. A voicemail. It was my father. I pressed play. His voice was different than I had ever heard it. It wasn't the kindly, bumbling dad. It wasn't the stern patriarch. It was the voice of a man who was cornered and holding a weapon. "Ellie, it is Dad. Your mother is in a state. I had to give her a sedative. I am going to make this simple. We did what we had to do to protect this family. If you do not resume the payments by Friday, and if you continue to dig into things that do not concern you, we are going to have to do something we do not want to do. We have records too. Ellie, we know things about your past that you might not want your employer to know. Do not force our hand. Just be a good daughter and fix this." The message ended. I replayed it. "We know things about your past." I frowned. What past? I was a logistics manager. I paid my taxes. I had never been arrested. I didn't do drugs. My past was a series of library fines and student council meetings. It was a bluff, a desperate, empty threat meant to trigger my childhood fear of being in trouble. But the threat of legal action or public humiliation lingered. We are going to have to do something we do not want to do. That wasn't a parent speaking. That was an adversary. I needed physical proof. The digital trail was strong. But if this went to court, or even just to mediation, I needed the smoking gun. I needed to see the original documents. I waited until Saturday. I knew my parents went to the farmers' market in the neighboring town from 9 to 12 every Saturday morning. It was a ritual they never missed. I drove to Pine Hollow. I parked my car 2 streets over, just in case. I still had my key to the house. I prayed they hadn't changed the locks. I walked up the driveway, my heart hammering like a piston. The house looked innocent in the morning sun. The birds were singing. It felt surreal to be breaking into my childhood home to prove my parents were thieves. The key turned in the lock. It clicked. I slipped inside and disarmed the alarm system with the code. My birthday, 0412. The irony stung. I didn't go to the kitchen. I went straight to the upstairs hallway, to the pull-down attic stairs. The attic was stiflingly hot, smelling of fiberglass insulation and mothballs. I pulled the string light, illuminating the stacks of cardboard boxes. My parents were hoarders of paper. They kept everything: old tax returns, report cards, greeting cards. I scanned the labels written in my mother's looping handwriting: Xmas Decor, Tax 2015, Ellie, College. I found a stack of boxes in the corner, hidden behind a garment rack of old winter coats. Mia, General. I opened the top box. It was full of glossy magazines, sketches, and fabric swatches. I dug deeper. At the bottom, under a layer of old yearbooks, there was a blue plastic accordion folder. It wasn't labeled. I pulled it out and opened the flap. Inside were letters, official letters: Briarstone Holdings, BSH, Lending Group. Second notice of default. I pulled one out. It was a statement from 3 months ago. Borrower: Ellie Griffin. Co-borrower: blank property address, 14 Maple Drive, Lake Briar. And underneath that, stapled to the back, was a copy of a check from my parents' joint account, made out to BSH Lending, with the memo line, E. Griffin Loan. They were paying it. They had the statements. They were hiding them in a box labeled with Mia's name. I flipped through the folder. I found a letter from a notary public. Tamsin Rowe. Dear Bob, the sticky note on the letter read, "Here's the copy you asked for. Don't worry about the witness line. I took care of it. Best, T." I felt sick. Bob, my father, he knew the notary. It wasn't just a random forgery. It was a conspiracy with a family friend. I heard a car door slam outside. I froze. I scrambled to the small attic window and peered through the grime. My parents' car wasn't there, but Mia's white convertible was parked in the driveway. She wasn't supposed to be here. I shoved the blue folder into my oversized tote bag. I didn't have time to put the box back perfectly. I turned off the light and scrambled down the attic stairs, retracting them just as the front door opened. I was standing in the hallway, dusting fiberglass off my jeans. When Mia walked in, she stopped. dropping her keys on the entry table. She was wearing oversized sunglasses and holding an iced coffee. "Ellie," she said, her voice sharp, "what are you doing here?" "Mom said you were exiled. I'm looking for childhood photos." I lied, my voice surprisingly steady. "For a project. I used my key." Mia narrowed her eyes behind the sunglasses. She walked closer, inspecting me. "You look guilty," she said. "You look like you are stealing the silverware." "I am not stealing anything. Mia, unlike some people in this family." She stiffened. "What is that supposed to mean?" I took a step toward her. The adrenaline was making my vision sharp. I saw the way her hand tightened around her coffee cup. "It means I found the loan. Mia, the one in Lake Briar, the one for $45,000. She didn't gasp. She didn't ask what loan. She went perfectly still. "I do not know what you are talking about," she said, but her voice lacked its usual theatrical flair. It was flat. "Do not lie to me." I said, "I saw the credit report. I saw the dates. The money went to your business. Dad and Mom took out a loan in my name to fund your investors, didn't they?" Mia let out a scoff. Turning her head away, "You are delusional. My investors are private equity." "Really?" I asked. "So if I call Briarstone Holdings and ask for the original application, they won't find your name on the beneficiary line?" Mia whipped her head back around. Her face was pale. "Briarstone wouldn't talk to you." She snapped. "They only deal with the primary." She stopped. The silence that followed was deafening. I hadn't mentioned that Briarstone was the lender. I had only said the loan in Lake Briar. I smiled, but there was no joy in it. I never said the lender's name was Briarstone. "Mia." Her mouth opened, then closed. She looked like a trapped animal. Her eyes darted to the door, then back to me. "You tricked me," she whispered. "I didn't trick you." I said, "You just forgot which lie you were telling. You do not understand," she said, her voice rising, becoming shrill. I was drowning. "Ellie, the business. It costs so much money to look successful. I needed inventory. I needed marketing. Mom and Dad said they would handle it. They said they had a way to get the capital without affecting their credit score. So they used mine?" I asked. "Because I am disposable?" "No," she cried. "Because you are strong. You have the good job. You have the credit. They said you would never know. They said they would pay it off before you ever needed a mortgage. It was supposed to be a victimless crime." "Ellie, a victimless crime where I pay $600 a month for 10 years? "You were helping," she screamed, stomping her foot like a child. "You were helping your family. Why do you have to be so selfish about the details?" I stared at her. She genuinely believed it. She believed that my autonomy was a technicality, a detail that could be smoothed over if the intent was helping the family. "I have to go," I said, hoisting my bag onto my shoulder. "If you tell anyone," Mia hissed, tears streaming down her face now, ruining her makeup. "If you tell anyone, you are ruining Mom and Dad. They could go to jail." "Ellie, is that what you want? To put your parents in jail over money?" I walked to the door. I put my hand on the knob. "I don't want to put them in jail, Mia, but I am done being the prisoner." I walked out to my car. My hands were shaking so badly I had to sit there for 5 minutes before I could turn the ignition. As I backed out of the street, I saw a neighbor, Mrs. Gable, checking her mailbox. She was a nosy woman who had lived next door for 30 years. I rolled down my window. I needed one more piece of the puzzle. "Hi, Mrs. Gable," I called out. "Ellie," she said, looking up. "I haven't seen you in ages. Everything okay?" "I saw your sister's car. Yeah, everything is fine," I said, just picking up some things. "Hey, weird question. Has anyone been by the house lately looking for Dad? He mentioned he missed a delivery." Mrs. Gable's face crinkled. "Well, not a delivery," she said, lowering her voice and leaning toward the car window. "But there was a man here about 2 weeks ago. Dressed real serious, carrying a stack of papers. A process server?" I asked, my stomach dropping. "It looked like it," she said. He taped something to the front door when nobody answered. Your dad tore it down fast when he got home. Told me it was just junk mail flyers. But Ellie, I saw the red stamp on it. It said, Notice of Default. Thank you, Mrs. Gable. I said. I drove away, my mind racing. Notice of default. If the loan was current, if my payments had been keeping it afloat, why was there a default notice? Unless there was another loan, or unless the loan wasn't just a personal loan, I drove straight to the county clerk's office. It was closed, but their online portal was accessible from my phone. I pulled into a parking lot of a diner and pulled up the county property records. I searched my parents' address. The deed was there, Robert and Susan Griffin, but under the encumbrances tab, there was a new entry, filed 6 months ago. Lien holder, Briarstone Holdings, LLC. Amount, $65,000. Debtor, Ellie Griffin/Robert Griffin. I stared at the tiny screen. They hadn't just taken out a loan in my name. They had used the house as collateral for a second loan, or maybe they had cross-collateralized the fraud. The lien was attached to the property, but my name was on the lien. If I stopped paying, Briarstone wouldn't just sue me. They would foreclose on my parents' house. The trap was perfect. It was diabolical. They knew I would find out eventually, or maybe they just knew I would never let them be homeless. They had tied the debt to their physical shelter. If I cut off the money, I wasn't just stopping an allowance. I was evicting them. That was the something they didn't want to do my father had warned me about. He wasn't threatening to sue me. He was threatening to let the house fall, knowing I would blame myself. I sat in the diner parking lot, watching the cars go by. I felt cornered. I felt small. I could go back to the transfers. I could pay the $600. I could pay it for the next 20 years. I could save their house. I could keep the peace. I could be the good daughter. And in exchange, I would cease to be a person. I would just be a resource, a vein they could tap whenever Mia needed a recharge. I looked at the blue folder in the passenger seat. I thought about the notary, Tamsin Rowe. I thought about Mia's selfish tears. I thought about my mother calling me hateful. I picked up my phone and called Mr. Vance, leaving a message on his after-hours line. Mr. Vance, it is Ellie. I found the papers. It is worse than we thought. There is a lien on the house, but I have the proof of the forgery. I took a deep breath. File the dispute. I said, file the affidavit. Initiate the fraud claim. I am freezing everything. I hung up. I was choosing myself, and for the first time, I understood that saving myself meant letting them fall. The paperwork of betrayal was drier than I expected. There were no tear stains on the forms. No dramatic music swelling in the background as I sat at my dining room table, filling out the identity theft affidavit for the Federal Trade Commission. It was just boxes to check and lines to sign. Did you authorize this account? No. Did you receive benefit from this account? No. Do you know the person who may have opened this account? My pen hovered over that box for a long time. The legal term was suspect. The biological term was father. I checked yes. Following Mr. Vance's instructions, I sent the validation letters via certified mail to Briarstone Holdings and the 3 major credit bureaus. I drafted them with the cold precision of the logistics manager I was, stripping away all the emotion until only the facts remained. I dispute this debt. I demand proof of authorization. I demand the original instrument of indebtedness. Then came the digital purge. I logged into my primary bank account, the one my father had helped me open when I was 18, and I closed it. I moved everything to a new bank, one with a vault-like logo and no branches in Pine Hollow. I set up 2-factor authentication on everything: email, retirement accounts, even my social media. I felt a surge of power as I watched the password changed successfully notifications pop up on my screen. I was locking the doors. I was pulling up the drawbridge. But beneath the empowerment, there was a deep, corrosive shame. It was the shame of a victim who feels responsible for the crime. I felt dirty for locking my own parents out of my life, as if I were the one breaking a sacred covenant. I had to remind myself, over and over, That I wasn't the one who had started this, I was just the one finishing it. The retaliation didn't take long. They knew I had stopped the money. They knew I was digging. And now, they knew I was ghosting them. 2 days after I mailed the letters, I was in my apartment, folding laundry. It was a Tuesday evening, quiet and rainy. Then the pounding started. It wasn't a polite knock. It was a heavy, frantic hammering that shook the door in its frame. "Ellie, open this door!" It was my mother. Her voice wasn't the sweet, wheedling tone she used on the phone. It was shrill, pitched for maximum acoustic penetration. I froze. Clutching a gray sweater to my chest, I crept toward the peephole. They were both there. My mother was wearing her raincoat, her hair wild and damp. My father stood behind her, looking grim and red-faced. "Ellie, we know you are in there!" my mother screamed. She turned her head, looking up and down the hallway, ensuring her voice carried to every other door on the 14th floor. "How can you do this to us? After everything we sacrificed?" I stepped back from the door, my heart hammering against my ribs. I couldn't open it. If I opened it, they would come in. They would occupy my space, fill it with their noise and their guilt, and I would crumble. I always crumbled. "She is abandoning us," my mother wailed, hitting the wood with the flat of her hand. "Our own daughter. We are sick. Ellie, your father has a heart condition. Do you want to kill him? Is that what you want?" I heard a door open down the hall. A neighbor, probably the nice guy from 14B, checking the commotion. "Please," I whispered to the empty room. "Please go away. We do not know who you are anymore," my father bellowed. His voice was deep, shaking the floorboards. "You have become a monster. Ellie, a cold-hearted, selfish monster." The insults were designed to hurt, but they were also designed to shame. They were making a scene so that I would open the door just to make it stop. It was a tantrum weaponized. I leaned my back against the door and slid down until I was sitting on the floor. My knees pulled to my chest. I didn't say a word. I didn't unlock the deadbolt. I just breathed, counting the seconds. Eventually, the pounding stopped. There was a low mumble of conversation, a final kick at the bottom of the door, and then the sound of the elevator dinging. They were gone. I sat there for 20 minutes, shaking. I felt like a child again, hiding in my closet while they fought downstairs. But I had held the line. I hadn't opened the door. Later that night, when the hallway was silent, I opened the door to check for damage. There were scuff marks on the paint, and there was a white envelope lying on the doormat. It didn't have a stamp. It had just my name. Ellie, written in purple ink, Mia's handwriting. I picked it up and brought it inside, tearing it open with trembling fingers. It was a single sheet of lined notebook paper, covered in hurried, looping script. "Ellie, Mom and Dad are a mess. I hope you are happy. I know you think you are doing the right thing, but you do not understand how the real world works. You have lived in your bubble for so long. Yes, I borrowed the money, okay? I said it. Are you satisfied? But I didn't steal it. I borrowed it against your credit because I knew you would want to help me if you weren't so obsessed with rules. You have a stable job. You have savings. You do not understand what it is like to have a dream and no capital. I was going to pay it back. The business was going to take off. We had a plan, but the market crashed, and the inventory got stuck in customs, and things happened. It wasn't my fault. And technically, you would have helped me anyway. Right? You always said you wanted me to be happy. So why does the paperwork matter so much? You are punishing Mom and Dad for my mistake. If you keep pushing this, you are going to destroy the family over a technicality. Just pay the bill. Ellie, you can afford it. We can't. Love, even though you are being impossible. Mia. I read the letter twice. It was a masterclass in manipulation. I borrowed it. Technically, a technicality. She framed $45,000 of identity fraud as a mistake regarding paperwork. She justified using my name because I would have helped anyway. It was the logic of a parasite effectively arguing that the host should be grateful for the company. But there was a detail in the letter that snagged my attention. The inventory got stuck in customs. Mia's styling business was supposed to be a service, personal shopping, wardrobe consulting. Why would she have inventory stuck in customs? I went back to the blue folder I had stolen from the attic. I pulled out the loan documents again. I looked at the disbursement dates. The money hadn't gone to a personal account. It had been wired to Lumina Imports, LLC. I searched the name on the Secretary of State website. Lumina Imports, LLC, registered agent, Mia Griffin, status, dissolved/inactive. I dug deeper. I found a cached version of a website. It wasn't a styling business. It was a drop-shipping scheme. Mia had tried to import cheap luxury knockoffs, handbags, sunglasses, and sell them as curated vintage. The business had collapsed within 6 months. The inventory was likely seized or worthless. But here was the twist. The loan from Briarstone wasn't a business loan. It was a personal loan, secured by the equity in my parents' house, but taken out in my name. When Lumina Imports folded, the debt didn't vanish. The lender simply rolled the loss into the lien structure. They had refinanced the bad debt into the house, effectively burying Mia's failure in the foundation of my parents' home and putting my name on the tombstone. I realized then that my parents weren't just protecting Mia from poverty. They were protecting her from fraud charges. If investors found out she had funded the company with a fraudulent loan, she wouldn't just be bankrupt. She would be liable. I needed to talk to Mr. Vance. I met him the next morning before work. I showed him the letter and the printouts about Lumina Imports. This connects the dots. Mr. Vance said, tapping the paper. It establishes motive. Your sister needed capital, couldn't get it, and your parents used your credit profile to secure it. But Ellie, we still have the issue of the signature. He pulled the blurry copy of the Family Loan Assistance Agreement from his file. If this document exists, and if they produce it, they will claim you authorized this use of funds. They will say you were a silent partner in the business, but I didn't sign it. I said, Mr. Vance nodded. I believe you, but in a court of law. A notarized signature carries a presumption of validity. You have to prove it is fake. He pointed to the stamp at the bottom of the page. Tamsin Row, Notary Public, Lake Briar, State of New York. If a notary stamped this, they are asserting that you stood in front of them, showed ID, and signed it. If you weren't there, then the notary is either incompetent or complicit. I looked at the name, Tamsin Row. I'm going to pay her a visit. I said, Mr. Vance looked wary. Do not confront her. Ellie, do not make a scene. Just observe. See if she remembers you. See if the office is legitimate. I took a sick day on Thursday. The drive to Lake Briar was beautiful, winding through changing leaves and rolling hills. A stark contrast to the ugliness I was carrying in my stomach. Lake Briar was a main street town. A single strip of brick buildings, a post office, a diner, and a few antique shops. It was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone's business. I found the address for Row Associates. It was a small storefront with gold lettering on the window. Insurance, real estate, notary services. I parked across the street and watched for a moment. A woman in her 50s with dyed blonde hair was sitting at the front desk, typing. I put on my sunglasses and walked in. The bell above the door chimed. The woman looked up. She had a kind, practiced smile. Hi there. Can I help you? She asked. Hi, I said, keeping my voice casual. I'm actually looking for some information on local real estate. I'm thinking of moving to the area. Oh, wonderful, she said. We have some great listings. Are you looking for a house or land? A house, I said. I looked around the office. It was cluttered but cozy. There were plaques on the wall for local business awards, and there were photos, lots of photos. I stepped closer to the wall, pretending to look at a map of the county. You have been here a long time? I asked. 30 years, she said proudly. Born and raised. I scanned the framed pictures. Tamsin shaking hands with the mayor. Tamsin at a ribbon-cutting ceremony. And then, I saw it. It was a photo from a golf tournament. Annual Pine Hollow Charity Scramble was written on the banner in the background. Standing next to Tamsin, wearing a polo shirt and holding a trophy, was my father. They had their arms around each other's shoulders. They were laughing. It wasn't a professional handshake. It was the body language of old friends, drinking buddies. I felt a chill run down my spine. My father drove 30 minutes to this specific town, to this specific woman, to get his documents notarized. That is a great picture, I said, pointing to it. Is that Bob Griffin? Tamsin's face lit up. Oh, yes, you know Bob? He is my father, I said. The smile dropped from her face instantly. It didn't fade. It vanished. She went pale beneath her makeup. Oh, she said. Her voice was suddenly tight. You are Ellie? Yes, I said, turning to look her dead in the eye. I am Ellie. She swallowed hard. She glanced at the phone on her desk, then back at me. I didn't know you were in the area. Bob didn't mention it. I bet he didn't. I said, I was just driving through. I saw the sign. I remembered Dad mentioning you. He said you helped him with some paperwork a few years ago. She stood up, smoothing her skirt. Her hands were shaking. I do a lot of paperwork. Ellie, I have an appointment coming in. I can't really chat. I didn't move. Did I come in with him? I asked. When he signed those papers? I can't remember. Tamsin walked around the desk, moving toward the door, her body language screaming, Get out! I do not keep records that far back in my head. Dear, look, you really need to go. She opened the door and held it for me. It wasn't a polite gesture. It was an eviction. I walked out. As I crossed the street, I saw her flip the sign in the window from open to closed and lock the deadbolt. Then she picked up the phone. She was calling him. I got back in my car and drove 2 blocks away, pulling into a gas station to catch my breath. It was confirmed. Tamsin wasn't a stranger. She was a co-conspirator. She had stamped a document saying I was present when I wasn't, likely because my father asked her to do him a favor. My phone rang. It was Mia. I stared at the screen. I debated letting it go to voicemail, but I needed to hear the panic. I needed to gauge the fallout from my visit to Tamsin. I answered, What did you do? Mia screamed. She wasn't using her sweet voice or her victim voice. She sounded terrified. I visited a friend of Dad's. I said calmly, Tamsin, she seems nice. You are ruining everything, Mia sobbed. Tamsin called Dad. She is freaking out. She says she could lose her license. She should lose her license. Mia, she committed fraud. Why are you doing this? Mia wailed. You always needed to be the hero. You always had to be the one with the perfect grades and the perfect job. And now you are punishing everyone because we aren't perfect like you. I listened to her words. You always needed to be the hero. It was a projection. She didn't see me as a victim. She saw me as a persecutor. In her mind, my refusal to be abused was an act of aggression. I am not trying to be a hero. Mia, I said, I am trying to not be $45,000 in debt for your fake handbag business. She went silent. You know about Lumina? She whispered. I know everything. I said, I know about the shell company. I know about the inventory. I know Tamsin stamped the papers. Mia's breathing was ragged. I am scared, Ellie, she said, her voice small. I am really scared. If this comes out, then tell the truth. I said, I can't, she cried. Mom and Dad said, they said if we just hold on, they can sell the house in a year or 2 and pay it all off. They just need time. Please, Ellie, just give them time. I hung up. I drove home in silence. The pieces were all there. The motive, the method, the accomplices. When I got home, there was a large envelope in my mailbox. It was the response from Briarstone Holdings. I took it upstairs and opened it on my kitchen counter. R.E. Validation of debt. Account 88902. Dear Ms. Griffin, enclosed, please find the validation of the debt referenced above. Our records indicate that this loan was opened electronically on October 14, 2019. I flipped through the pages. Borrower address, 14 Maple Drive, Lake Briar, New York. Borrower, phone, 555-0199. I didn't recognize the number, but then I saw the origination log. October 15th, 2019, 10:14 a.m. Outbound verification call to borrower. Borrower verified D, OB, and SSN, confirmed intent to proceed. October 15th, 2019. I opened my laptop and checked my work calendar from 4 years ago. I kept everything archived. October 15th, 2019, 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Trans-Pacific Logistics Summit. Keynote speaker. I was on a stage in Chicago in front of 200 people at 10:14 a.m. I was not answering a verification call from a lender. Someone else had answered that phone. Someone who knew my social security number. Someone who sounded enough like me to pass a security check. Mia, or my mother. They hadn't just forged a signature, they had impersonated me on a recorded line. I felt a cold resolve settle over me. This wasn't a family dispute anymore. It was identity theft in the first degree. The next day, the offer came. My parents didn't come to the door this time. They sent an email. It was carbon copied to Mia. Subject: a solution. Ellie, we have all had a few days to cool down. We are willing to put this ugliness behind us. We love you, and we hate to see our family torn apart by money. Here is our proposal. You resume the monthly assistance for 6 months. Just 6 months. In that time, we will refinance the home loan or list the property for sale. We will pay off the Briarstone account in full. If you do this, we will forgive you for the disruption and the hurt you have caused this week. We will not mention the accusations again. We can go back to being a family. Please let us know by tomorrow. We need to know if we can count on you. I stared at the screen. We will forgive you. The audacity was breathtaking. They were offering to let me pay them to stop stealing from me, and framing it as their mercy, but I looked closer at the timeline. 6 months. Why 6 months? I looked at the notice of default date Mrs. Gable had mentioned. In New York, the foreclosure timeline usually had a 6-month window before the auction if the homeowner didn't cure the default. They weren't trying to fix it. They were trying to buy enough time to stop the bank from seizing the house immediately. They needed my payments to show good faith to the lender to stall the foreclosure. If I agreed, I would be reaffirming the debt. I would be creating a paper trail that said, yes, I am paying this. It would destroy my fraud claim. They were trying to trap me one last time. I hit reply all. No. I typed it. Then I deleted it. That wasn't enough. I typed again. I will not resume payments. I will not validate this fraudulent debt. Your forgiveness is not required. As I have done nothing wrong, I am requesting a formal meeting. I want everyone present. Mom, Dad, Mia. I want Mr. Vance there, and I want a representative from Briarstone Holdings or the lien servicer on the line. We are going to put every document on the table, the original agreement, the notary log, the disbursement records for Lumina imports, everything. If you refuse this meeting, my attorney will proceed with filing criminal fraud charges against all named parties on Monday morning. Ellie, I hit send. I sat back in my chair. My heart was pounding, but my hands were steady. I had called their bluff. They relied on secrecy. They relied on my shame. They relied on the idea that I would never burn the house down because I was inside it too. But I wasn't inside it anymore. I had walked out, and now I was striking the match. The mediation center was located in a converted warehouse in the newly gentrified district of Merriwick. It was a place of exposed brick, frosted glass, and neutral gray carpet, a design aesthetic meant to soothe people who were there to tear each other apart over money. I sat at the long mahogany table next to Mr. Vance. My hands were folded in my lap, gripping each other so tightly that my fingers had gone numb. I was wearing my best suit, a navy blue blazer that made me feel like armor-plated steel. Mr. Vance leaned in. Remember, he said, his voice a low rumble, you are not here to win their approval. You are here to correct the record. Stick to the facts. Do not let them pull you into the emotional weeds. I nodded. I knew the strategy, but knowing the strategy and executing it while staring into the faces of the people who raised me were two very different things. The door opened. My parents walked in first. They didn't look like fraudsters. They didn't look like thieves. They looked like victims. My mother was wearing a soft cardigan and clutching a tissue, her eyes red-rimmed and tragic. My father walked with a slight limp that I knew he exaggerated for sympathy. His face set in a mask of wounded dignity. They didn't look at me. They walked past my chair as if I were a piece of furniture and sat on the opposite side of the table. Then we waited. 5 minutes, 10 minutes. It was a power play. Mia was always late. It was her way of asserting that her time was more valuable than everyone else's, that the world waited for her entrance. Finally, the door swung open again. Mia breezed in, breathless, wearing oversized sunglasses and a coat that probably cost more than my monthly rent. She pulled them off as she sat down, revealing eyes that were perfectly made up to look sorrowful. "Sorry," she whispered to the room at large. "Parking was a nightmare." She looked at me then, a quick, darting glance. There was no apology in it. Just fear and a strange, stubborn defiance. The mediator, a woman named Ms. Albright with a sharp bob and sharper eyes, cleared her throat. Beside her sat a man in a charcoal suit. Mr. Sterling, the representative from Briarstone Holdings. He had a laptop open and a thick file in front of him. He looked bored. To him, we were just another bad debt in a spreadsheet. "Ms. Albright began, "We are here to discuss the outstanding liability regarding the loan account ending in 4022, secured by the property at 14 Maple Drive, Lake Briar, and the associated lien on the residence in Pine Hollow. The lender asserts that Miss Ellie Griffin is the primary borrower and is in default. Ms. Griffin contests the validity of this debt." She turned to Mr. Sterling. Mr. Sterling looked at me, his expression flat. "Ms. Griffin," he said, his voice smooth and corporate. "We have a signed credit agreement dated October 14th, 4 years ago. We have a history of 48 on-time payments made from an account in your family's name. From our perspective, this is a valid debt. You stopped paying 3 months ago. We are simply seeking to cure the default or proceed with our rights to the collateral." I took a breath. I felt the old urge to apologize, to smooth it over, to say I am so sorry for the confusion. It was the reflex of the dependable daughter. "I killed it. I did not sign that agreement," I said, my voice steady, "and I did not make those payments." My father let out a heavy, tragic sigh. He shook his head, looking down at the table. "Ellie," he said, his voice thick with disappointment, "please, do not do this." Mr. Vance placed a hand on my arm, signaling me to stop. He took over. "My client has provided bank records showing that the payments were made by her parents, Robert and Susan Griffin, from their joint account. We have also provided a timeline of Ms. Griffin's whereabouts on the date of the alleged origination." Mr. Sterling tapped a key on his laptop. "We have a record of a verification call." He said, "October 15th, 10:14 in the morning. The borrower verified her social security number and date of birth." I reached into my bag and pulled out a single sheet of paper. I slid it across the table toward the mediator. "This is the program guide for the Trans-Pacific Logistics Summit in Chicago." I said, "On October 15th, at 10:14 in the morning, I was on stage giving a keynote speech. There's a video of it online. I can send you the link. I could not have answered a verification call on a landline in New York while I was speaking into a microphone in Illinois." Mr. Sterling picked up the paper. He frowned. My mother made a small, choking sound. "You are calling us liars?" she whispered. "In front of strangers?" I looked at her. "I am stating facts. Mom, someone pretended to be me." Mr. Sterling pulled a paper from his file. "We also have identification on file," he said. "A copy of a driver's license submitted with the application." He slid the copy across the table. I looked at it. It was my license, my face, my information, but then I looked at the issue date. This license expired 6 years ago. I said, "I got a new one when I moved to the city. See the address? It lists the Pine Hollow house." "So?" my father snapped. "It is still your ID." I left this old license in my bedside drawer when I moved out. I said, looking directly at him, I didn't think I needed to shred it. I thought it was safe in my parents' house. The room went silent. The implication hung in the air like smoke. They hadn't just forged a signature. They had raided my old room, found my discarded ID, and used it to build a synthetic identity. It was premeditated. It was predatory. My father sat up straighter. He adjusted his tie. He realized he was losing the factual argument, so he pivoted to the only weapon he had left, the narrative. "Can I speak?" he asked the mediator. She nodded. "Go ahead. Mr. Griffin." He looked at me with eyes that were wet with unshed tears. It was a performance I had seen 1,000 times, usually right before he asked for money. "Ellie is leaving out the context," he said, his voice trembling. "She is making it sound like a crime, but it was a promise." He looked around the room, gathering his audience. 5 years ago, when I had my heart scare, Ellie sat by my hospital bed. She held my hand. She said, "Dad, I will do whatever it takes to take care of you and Mom. You do not have to worry about anything." He looked at me, his gaze intense and pleading. "You said that. Ellie, do you deny it?" I didn't deny it. I remembered it. I was terrified he was going to die. I would have promised him the moon. We took that to heart. He continued, "We were drowning in medical bills. We needed help. And we knew you wanted to help. So yes, maybe we expedited the paperwork. Maybe we didn't want to burden you with the details because you were so busy with your big career. But we did it because we are a family. We did it because we thought your love was real." He leaned back, looking exhausted and noble. "And now," he added softly, "you are using a technicality to destroy us. You are breaking your promise." It was brilliant. He had reframed identity theft as the fulfillment of a daughter's vow. He had turned the crime into an act of love, and my objection into an act of betrayal. "Mr. Sterling looked at me, curious to see if I would fold. The mediator looked uncomfortable. I felt the pull, the familiar magnetic pull of the guilt. It would be so easy to nod, to say, "Okay, Dad, I get it. Let's just fix it." But then I looked at Mia. She was watching me, chewing on her lip, her eyes calculating. She wasn't thinking about my promise. She was thinking about her inventory. I took a deep breath. Love is not a blank check. "Dad," I said quietly. My father flinched as if I had slapped him. "I promised to care for you." I said, "I did not promise to let you impersonate me. I did not promise to let you take out a $45,000 loan in my name to fund a shell company for Mia." Mia gasped. My mother's head snapped up. "Mr. Sterling straightened in his chair. "Excuse me?" the lender's rep said. "A shell company?" I reached into my bag again. This time, I pulled out the blue accordion folder. I placed it on the table with a heavy thud. "I found this in the attic." I said, "Hidden in a box labeled with Mia's name." I opened it. I took out the loan statements. I took out the letters from Briarstone. And I took out the document with the notary stamp. "This is the agreement my father claims I signed," I said, pointing to the blurry signature. "And this is the stamp of Tamsin Rowe." I pulled out the photo I had taken in Tamsin's office, the one of her and my father laughing at the golf tournament. "Tamsin Rowe is not an impartial witness." I said, "She is a family friend. She stamped this document without me present because my father asked her to. That is fraud." "And the money?" "It didn't go to medical bills." I slid the Secretary of State printout across the table. "It went to Lumina Imports, LLC, a company registered to Mia Griffin, a company that no longer exists." The room was deadly silent. The air pressure seemed to drop. This wasn't a mediation anymore. It was an indictment. "Mr. Sterling picked up the document about Lumina Imports. He read it quickly, his eyes scanning the page. Then he looked at Mia. "Ms. Griffin," he said to my sister, "did you receive the funds from this loan?" Mia froze. She looked at our parents. My father was staring at the table, his face pale. My mother was gripping her tissue so hard it was shredding. They couldn't help her. Mia stammered, I watched her face. I saw the moment the mask slipped, the victimhood vanished, replaced by the raw, animal panic of a child who realizes there is no adult left to hide behind. She looked at me, her eyes pleading. "Save me. You always save me." I didn't look away, but I didn't smile. I just waited. "I signed it," she blurted out. My mother let out a sharp cry. "Mia! I had to!" Mia cried, tears spilling over now. Real tears this time. I was drowning. The suppliers were demanding money. I had inventory stuck at the port. Mom and Dad said it was the only way. She pointed a shaking finger at our father. "He told me to sign Ellie's name. He said Tamsin would fix it. He said Ellie would never know because they would pay it off before she found out. He said it was legal because we were family. Mr. Sterling closed his file. The sound was like a gunshot in the quiet room. He looked at Miss Albright. "I think we are done here," he said. "This is not a dispute regarding a borrower's ability to pay. This is an admission of fraud and conspiracy to defraud a lender." He turned to me. "Ms. Griffin, I appreciate you bringing this to light." Then he turned to my parents. My mother stood up. Her chair scraped loudly against the floor. She wasn't looking at the lawyer. She was looking at me. Her face was contorted, stripped of all the soft, maternal layers she usually wore. "Are you happy?" she hissed. "Mom," I started. "Are you happy now?" she screamed. "You have destroyed us. You have humiliated your sister. You have exposed your father. Is this what you wanted? To win?" "I didn't want this." "Mom," I said, "I wanted the truth." "The truth?" She laughed. A bitter, jagged sound. "The truth is that you were always difficult. Even when you were little, you always counted everything. You always kept score. You never just loved us. You always had to be right." It was the ultimate weapon in her arsenal. The rewriting of my entire existence. My desire for fairness was retconned into a character flaw. My need for boundaries was framed as a lack of love. I looked at her, and for the first time, I didn't feel the sting. I just felt sad. I saw a woman so terrified of her own mediocrity that she would cannibalize her own child to keep up appearances. "I am not difficult, Mom," I said softly. "I am just not yours anymore." "Mr. Sterling cleared his throat. "Mr. and Mrs. Griffin," he said, his voice hard. "Briarstone Holdings takes this very seriously. Since Ms. Ellie Griffin did not authorize this debt, we will be removing her name from the obligation immediately." My father looked up, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "So, the debt is gone?" "No, Mr. Sterling said, his voice dripping with ice. "The debt remains, but now it is an unsecured debt obtained through fraudulent means. And since the lien on your home was cross-collateralized with this loan, we will be moving to accelerate the foreclosure on your property to recover our losses. Unless, of course, you can pay the full $45,000 plus interest and legal fees today." My father slumped in his chair. He looked old. He looked defeated. "They will take the house," he whispered. My mother turned to me, clutching my arm. Her grip was painful. "Ellie," she begged, her voice shifting instantly from rage to desperation. "You can't let them take the house. It is your home too. Please, just say you signed it. We will pay you back. I swear. Just tell him you remembered. Please." I looked at her hand on my arm. I looked at Mia, sobbing into her hands. I looked at my father, staring into the abyss of his own making. I could save them. It would cost me $45,000 and my self-respect. But I could do it. I could take the blame one last time. I could be the hero. "Mr. Vance looked at me. He didn't say anything. He just waited. I gently peeled my mother's fingers off my arm. "I can't do that." "Mom," I said. I turned to Mr. Sterling. "I am willing to cooperate with your investigation." I said, "I will provide the affidavit and the timeline, but I require a letter from Briarstone acknowledging that I have no liability for this debt, and I want it today." Mr. Sterling nodded. "We can provide that." "But Ellie," my mother wailed. "The house." I stood up. My legs felt shaky, but I was standing. I am sorry about the house. Mom, I said, I really am. But I didn't buy the inventory, and I didn't forge the signature. I looked at the three of them. A tableau of wreckage. You made choices. I said, now you have to live in them. I turned to Mr. Vance. Let's go. We walked out of the conference room. I heard my mother screaming my name as the heavy door clicked shut behind us. I walked through the lobby, past the frosted glass, and out into the cool air of Merriwick. The sun was shining. It was a bright, ordinary Tuesday. I took a deep breath. My chest felt light, empty, but light. Mr. Vance stood beside me on the sidewalk. You did the hard thing. Ellie, he said. I did. I said, is it over? I asked. He looked at me with a grim smile. The legal part for you? Mostly. The emotional part? No. And for them? It is just beginning. I nodded. I knew he was right. They wouldn't go quietly. Families like mine never did. They would spin a new story. They would tell everyone I was a monster. They would make themselves the martyrs of my cruelty. But for the first time in 33 years, I didn't care what the story was, because I wasn't writing it for them anymore. I checked my phone. I had blocked their numbers before I walked into the meeting. There were no notifications, just a blank screen. I walked toward my car. I had a lot of work to do. I had to rebuild my credit. I had to find a new notary. I had to figure out who I was if I wasn't the dependable daughter. But as I unlocked my car door, I realized something. I wasn't the dependable daughter anymore. I was just Ellie, and that was enough. The days between the mediation and the final formal hearing were filled with a silence that felt like holding my breath underwater. The city of Merriwick continued its mechanical rhythm, trains screeching, rain falling, sirens wailing, but my personal world had narrowed to the size of a legal file. Mr. Vance called me on a Thursday afternoon. His voice was grim, the kind of tone that usually precedes bad news. But this time it was just a confirmation of how deep the deception ran. Ellie, he said, we just got the title search update for the hearing tomorrow. It looks like your parents have been busy. Busy how? I asked, staring at the rain streaking my office window. They applied for a refinance 3 weeks ago, he said. And before that, they quietly listed the house as a pocket listing with a local agent. They were trying to sell it off-market. I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. A pocket listing meant they didn't want a sign in the yard. They didn't want the neighbors to know. They were trying to liquidate the asset, pay off the fraudulent lien, and bury the evidence before I ever saw a courtroom. They were going to sell my childhood home to cover up a lie. I whispered, it looks that way, Mr. Vance said. But the lien from Briarstone blocked them. They couldn't sell with the cloud on the title. That is why they were so desperate for you to resume payments. They needed the account current so they could get the payoff letter and close the sale. It all made sense. The desperation, the 6-month proposal. They weren't trying to save the house for themselves. They were trying to wash the money. The hearing was scheduled for Friday morning at the offices of a third-party settlement agent. It wasn't a courtroom, but it had the sterile, terrifying gravity of one. It was a closing environment, a long table, a court reporter, and stacks of documents that smelled of toner and finality. I arrived early. I wore black, not because I was mourning, but because I wanted to disappear. I wanted to be a void in the room, a non-entity that simply absorbed facts and repelled emotion. Mr. Vance was already there, arranging his files with surgical precision. They are going to try to rattle you, he warned without looking up. They know this is the end of the line. If the lender walks away from you today, the foreclosure clock starts ticking for them. I know. I said. The door opened, and the Griffin family entered. They looked like ghosts of the people I had known. My father, usually so robust and careful with his appearance, looked unshaven. His suit hung loosely on his frame. My mother looked brittle, her eyes darting around the room as if searching for an exit or a friendly face. She didn't look at me, and Mia looked different. She wasn't wearing her usual high-fashion armor. She was wearing a baggy sweater and leggings. Her hair pulled back in a messy bun. She looked young. She looked like the little sister I used to protect from thunderstorms. They sat on the opposite side of the table. The silence between us was a physical thing, a wall of glass that distorted the air. The settlement officer, a man named Mr. Henderson, cleared his throat. He was there to review the validity of the documents before Briarstone made their final determination on liability. We are here to examine the origination documents for the loan in question. Mr. Henderson said, we need to determine if the signature of Ellie Griffin was authorized, forged, or obtained under duress. He opened a large binder. Let us look at the notary log, he said. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was it. The smoking gun. Mr. Henderson turned the pages. We subpoenaed the records from Miss Tamsin Rowe, he said. She was reluctant, but she complied. He pointed to a line in the logbook. Here is the entry for October 14th. 4 years ago, he said. It lists the document, Family Loan Assistance Agreement. It lists the signer, Ellie Griffin. He looked up, his eyes scanning the room. However, he continued, there are irregularities. The column for type of ID presented is blank. The column for signer's signature in the logbook matches the handwriting of the notary herself. My father shifted in his seat. The leather creaked loudly. It was a busy day, my father said, his voice raspy. Tamsin was doing us a favor. She knew Ellie. She knew who she was. She didn't need to see a license she had seen a dozen times. Mr. Henderson looked at my father over the rim of his glasses. A notary cannot verify a signature if the signer is not present. Mr. Griffin, and the log suggests Ms. Griffin was not present. In fact, looking at the timestamp, Ms. Griffin has provided proof she was in Chicago. My father waved his hand dismissively. Dates get mixed up, he said. It was 4 years ago. Maybe it was the week before. Maybe it was the week after. The point is, Ellie agreed. She sat at our kitchen table, looked me in the eye, and said, I will sign whatever you need. I looked at him. He was lying with such conviction that I almost believed him. He had told himself this story so many times that it had calcified into truth in his mind. I never said that. Dad, I said quietly. He slammed his hand on the table. The sound made everyone jump except me. You did, he shouted. It was right after the transmission blew on the car. You came over for Sunday dinner. Mom made pot roast. You said, Dad, stop worrying. I have got this. You gave me your word. I watched him. I watched the vein pulsing in his forehead. The transmission blew 7 years ago. Dad, I said, this loan is from 4 years ago. He froze. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. He had mixed up his crises. He had conflated one of the many times I bailed them out with the time he stole from me. My mother jumped in to save him. It wasn't the car, she said quickly, her voice high and thin. It was the summer Ellie came back from that trip to the Cape. Remember? Ellie? You were feeling so guilty about spending all that money on a vacation while we were struggling. You said you wanted to make it right. I looked at my mother. I have never been to the Cape, Mom, I said. The room went silent again. You haven't? She stammered. No, I said. Mia went to the Cape. I went to a logistics conference in Detroit that summer. My mother blinked. She looked at Mia, then back at me. She couldn't tell us apart anymore. In her mind, we were just characters in the family play. Mia the star, Ellie the stagehand. She had assigned Mia's luxury vacation to me to justify her resentment, to justify stealing from me. You are confusing us. Mom, I said, you are rewriting history to make the theft feel okay. Mr. Henderson closed the logbook. The testimony is contradictory, he said dryly. The notary record is invalid on its face. The timeline does not hold up. Mr. Sterling, the lender's representative, leaned forward. Mr. and Mrs. Griffin, he said, Briarstone is prepared to stipulate that this loan was obtained without Ellie Griffin's consent. That means the liability shifts entirely to you, and since the loan is in default, We will be exercising our right to the collateral. My father's face went gray. You mean the house, he whispered. Mr. Sterling nodded. Immediate acceleration. Foreclosure proceedings will begin on Monday unless the balance is paid. The air in the room felt heavy, suffocating. My parents looked at each other. Then they looked at me. It was the look I had feared and expected. The look that said, "You can fix this." "Can we have a moment?" Mia asked suddenly. Her voice was small, trembling. "I need to talk to my sister, Mr." Henderson looked at me. I nodded. "Make it quick." "Mister," Vance said. Mia stood up and walked to the door. I followed her out into the hallway. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The carpet was a dull, industrial gray. Mia turned to me. She didn't look angry anymore. She looked terrified. "Ellie," she whispered, "you can't let them take the house." I crossed my arms. "It is not up to me." "Mia, it is up to the bank. It is up to you," she insisted, stepping closer. "If you just say you signed it, if you just say you forgot, they will reinstate the loan. We can make the payments. I promise. I will get a job. A real job." "Mia," I said, shaking my head, "you have said that for 10 years. She grabbed my hands. Her palms were clammy. "Ellie, please," she said. "I have to tell you something." She looked around the empty hallway, then leaned in close to my ear. "I am pregnant," she whispered. I pulled back, looking at her face. Her eyes were wide, wet with tears. "I am 3 months along," she said. "The father. He is not in the picture. It is just me. I need the house. Ellie, I need a place to bring the baby. I can't raise a child in a rental apartment. I need stability. Mom and Dad are going to help me raise it." I stared at her. I felt a pang of sympathy. Sharp and deep. A baby. A niece or nephew. A new life coming into this mess. But then I looked closer. I saw the way she was watching me, gauging my reaction. I saw the calculation behind the tears. She wasn't telling me because she wanted to share the joy. She was telling me because she needed leverage. She was using an unborn child as a bargaining chip to secure a house she hadn't paid for. It was the ultimate emotional hostage situation. Save the baby. Save the house. I felt the familiar pull to sacrifice, to say, "Okay, for the baby, I will carry the debt, I will ruin my credit, I will let you win." But then I thought about the baby. If I saved them, if I kept the house, that baby would grow up in the same house I did. That baby would learn that love is transactional. That baby would learn that lies are currency. That baby would watch Mia manipulate me and learn that manipulation is how you survive. Saving the house wouldn't save the baby. It would just perpetuate the cycle. I gently pulled my hands away from hers. "I am happy for you." "Mia," I said, "truly, I hope you are healthy." "Then help me," she hissed. "I can't." I said, "What do you mean you can't? You have the money. You have the credit. I have the money because I work. Mia, and I have the credit because I pay my bills. I am your sister," she cried. "And I am your sister." I said, "Not your bank, not your insurance policy." I looked at her stomach, then back at her eyes. "I can't save you by destroying me. Mia, that doesn't help the baby. It just teaches you that you never have to face a consequence." "You are heartless," she spat, the vulnerability vanishing instantly. "You are going to let your niece or nephew be homeless?" "You won't be homeless," I said calmly. "You can get an apartment. You can get a job. You can do what millions of single mothers do every day. You can grow up." I turned and walked back into the conference room. I didn't look back. The room was silent when I entered. My parents were staring at the door, waiting for the miracle, waiting for Mia to work her magic. I sat down. "Mister?" Sterling looked at me. "Have you reached a resolution?" he asked. "Yes," I said. I looked at my parents. My mother's eyes were wide, hopeful. My father was leaning forward. I looked at the paperwork in front of me. The affidavit of forgery, the release of liability. I picked up the pen. "I love you," I said. Looking at my parents, they smiled. A reflex. But I will not be your insurance policy, I said. The smiles vanished. I will not carry a debt created by lies. I continued, my voice gaining strength. I will not pay for a lifestyle I do not live, and I will not sign my name to a falsehood to save you from the consequences of your own actions. I lowered the pen to the paper. Ellie, no, my mother screamed. I signed, Ellie Griffin, a real signature, sharp, defined, final. I pushed the paper toward Mr. Sterling. I authorized the removal of my name from this account. I said, the room erupted. It wasn't a slow build, it was an explosion. My mother stood up so fast her chair tipped over. Ungrateful, she screamed. She pointed a shaking finger at me. After everything we did, we gave you life, we gave you a home, and this is how you repay us? By throwing us on the street? My father was purple with rage. You are a traitor, Ellie, he bellowed. You are betraying your own blood. For money? For a credit score? You are selling out your family for a bank? Mia ran back into the room. She saw the signed paper. She saw the look on Mr. Sterling's face. She is ruining us, Mia wailed, collapsing into the chair next to my mother. She is ruining the family. She doesn't care about the baby. She doesn't care about anyone but herself. The lawyers looked uncomfortable. Mr. Henderson was typing furiously on his stenotype machine, capturing every word of the meltdown. I sat there. I didn't argue. I didn't shout back. I didn't try to explain that they had ruined the family by stealing my identity. I didn't try to explain that they had betrayed me first. I realized that arguing was a form of intimacy. It was a way of staying engaged. I was done engaging. I stood up. I smoothed my blazer. Mr. Vance gathered my papers. We are done here, he said to the room. I turned to walk away. Ellie, my mother shouted, if you walk out that door, do not come back. Do not call us when you are lonely. Do you hear me? You are dead to us. I stopped. I turned around one last time. I looked at them. Really looked at them. The anger, the fear, the entitlement. I heard you. Mom, I said softly. I didn't say goodbye. There was no point. I walked out of the room, past the receptionist, who was pretending not to hear the screaming, and out into the parking lot. The sun was blinding. The air was crisp. My hands were shaking, not a little tremble, but a violent, racking shake that traveled all the way up my arms. My knees felt like water. I leaned against my car, gasping for air. I felt like I had just cut off my own limb to escape a trap. It hurt. It hurt more than I could describe. I was an orphan now. I had made myself an orphan. Mister? Vance walked out a few minutes later. He came over to me. Are you okay? He asked. No, I said. You will be. He said. It takes time. What happens to them? I asked. Mr. Sterling is filing the foreclosure notice today. He said they will have about 90 days to vacate. They will lose the house. The equity is gone, eaten up by the fraud and the fees, and the criminal charges? That is up to the district attorney. He said, Briarstone will likely file a report. Whether the DA pursues it against elderly parents, that is a toss-up, but their financial reputation is destroyed. I nodded. I got into my car. I watched Mr. Vance drive away. I sat there for a long time. I didn't turn on the engine. I just watched the clouds move across the sky. I was free. I was 33 years old, and for the first time, my name belonged to me. My money belonged to me. My future belonged to me. But freedom wasn't a triumphant fanfare. It was quiet. It was lonely. It was the terrifying vastness of an open road with no map. My phone buzzed in the cup holder. I looked at it, expecting another hateful text from my mother, or a plea from Mia. It was from a number I didn't recognize. No area code, just a string of digits that looked like a burner line. I opened the message. Family stories do not die easy. Ellie, you think you walked away. But ink stains. Watch your back. I stared at the words. It wasn't signed. It could have been my father. It could have been Mia. It could have been Tamsin. The notary. angry about losing her license, or it could have been someone else. Someone involved in the investors Mia had mentioned. The people who helped her set up the shell company. A chill went through me that had nothing to do with the weather. I had closed the account. I had severed the ties. But the text was a reminder. I had won the battle. But the war wasn't over. They were out there, angry and desperate. And they knew where I lived. I started the car. I locked the doors. I drove out of the parking lot, merging into the traffic of Merriwick. I looked in the rearview mirror. No one was following me. Not yet. I turned on the radio to drown out the silence. I drove toward the highway, toward the city, toward the uncertainty of a life that was finally, terrifyingly, my own. Thank you so much for listening to My Parents Always Blamed Me and Took My Sister's Side. So I decided to stop the monthly payments. This was a story about the heavy cost of boundaries and the painful reality of financial abuse within families. I would love to know where you are listening from today. Please leave a comment below and say hello. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more dramas about justice, betrayal, and standing up for yourself, please make sure to subscribe to the Revenge Stories channel. What do you think Ellie should do about that final text message? Share your thoughts and theories in the comments section. I read every single one. Thank you for your support, and I will see you in the next story.